The Merritt team recently embarked on a project that allows for greater visibility into collection content through object analysis. We set out to provide content owners with a way to introspect the objects in their collections. As they may not always be the same individuals who deposited those objects to begin with, it's important that the knowledge such a review provides be available at any time and at scale. We built a prototype that integrates repository object data with Amazon OpenSearch. The solution is engineered to achieve alignment between a JSON schema, which provides a structure for this data, and resulting filters provided in OpenSearch dashboards. A core building block of this approach depends on the repository's ability to manage data at the individual file level. Our objectives focused on enumerating object characteristics and metadata characteristics, and then demonstrating relationships between objects and digital files. In front of us is one of several OpenSearch dashboards that provides a means to start at the top level of content being stored in Merritt, and then subsequently enabling a way to drill down into groups of classifications and tests that are the result of the analysis. It's important to note that the analysis can be configured and tuned going forward as the needs and requirements of depositors in the larger digital preservation community change. As you can see here on this dashboard, we're currently filtering for CDL content, or content and collections from CDL. If I take a look here, you can also see that there are filters for all of the different UC campuses. Let's scroll down a little bit and take a look at these panels here. The Merritt Object Help by Mnemonic classification panel, or this panel here, actually lists out the different collections that are being displayed, and their data is being displayed here. And we have about 100 or so, close to 200 objects from several collections that have been processed, and then several objects from other collections down below here. Let's move over to Merritt Object Classification. These are some of the classifications that we put together to help bucket the different types of digital objects, such as has single digital file. This is an object, or these objects actually have single high-resolution files in them. Has derivatives only for objects that only have derivatives, such as JPEGs in them. Complex object, these are objects that might have derivatives, high resolution, multiple metadata files all together in a single object, and then so on and so forth as we go down the list here. You'll also notice that as I'm passing each of these entries, there's a small plus button that shows up and a minus button. The plus button is if I want to filter everything on the dashboard by this specific classification has single digital file. I could also go back over to the collections panel if I just want to look at the different objects that have been processed from this Earth Archive collection, then I could do that. But now let's go ahead and move over to this Merritt metadata classification panel. And these are classifications that we've come up with to actually take a look at the different types of metadata in particular objects. This has common metadata file in it. These are particular types of metadata files that we recognize as common across collections. There's has single metadata file. In other words, there's only one metadata file in the object, regardless of what kind of metadata file it is. There's another classification that says has no sidecar metadata. In other words, there might not be anything such as like an extensive like XML or mods file, for example, inside of these particular objects. So one more panel over here to the right, we're seeing Merritt not passing tests, info warn, or fail status. As part of the analysis, there are a variety of tests that are run against each object. This panel is highlighting the results of those tests, and it's also going to provide for you, or provide for everyone, the particular status of a test result. Maybe it's an info from the standpoint of this is just informational. We're not particularly worried about a particular type of file, but it's just to give you a heads up. There's warning and failure. For failures, for example, there might be a MIME type that we've classified as a type that we don't want in the repository, and that'll be a failing test that shows up. But then let's take a look at these going down. The unexpected MIME extension, doesn't have meaningful ERC who. In other words, there's no creator listed for that particular object at an object level. There might be an unsustainable MIME type as well. So these are MIME types that we're considering to be unsustainable based on either community recommendations or depositor recommendations and needs. There's also a MIME extension mismatch. In other words, the We use Apache Tika to register the MIMEs of the MIME types of each of the files as they're ingested into the repository. And occasionally, what that library picks up says it's a particular MIME type, but the actual file extension on that file is not the required file extension. And so there's a mismatch. And so we can filter with those as well. So let's actually go ahead and use some of these filters and take a look around. I'm going to start out with this has multi-digital files classification here for objects. I'll click that, and then we filtered everything in the dashboard down to this one single object in one click. We can drill down into this object, and what I'm going to do is actually open up the results in a separate tab. So again, this is a multiple files object. Let's actually scroll down here. These are the producer files in the object versus the system files. We're interested in the producer files that were put there by the depositor, and you can see that each of these are TSV files, and there are multiple TSV files in this particular object. And so this is a quick classification that shows us that there are multiple files that are not derivatives, that are probably the core data, the core tab separated value data that we actually want to have in this object. And there's nothing else at the moment. There are no other metadata files in this particular object, but that's what the filter has surfaced for us. So let me go back and collapse that, and then let's remove this particular filter, and we'll go back to all the data that we were looking at before. In this case, let's take a look at the multiple metadata, so objects that have multiple metadata files in them. Let's go down to, or go up to this particular collection, and there are 14 objects that have multiple metadata files in them. If I go to a specific object, again, I will move or open this out into a separate tab. Let's go down and take a look at the producer files in this object. And I can see here, okay, there are TSV files, there's a JSON file that could be considered metadata, there's a zip file that's definitely not metadata, and then here's one of the metadata files, a text file that we recognize. If I go down here a little bit farther, JSON, zip, and then here again is another metadata file. So there are multiple metadata files within this particular object. And then of course, if depending on whether or not we wanted to consider the JSON files, this looks like it could again be a metadata file. We could classify that way. It's a manner or way that we could consider tuning the actual analysis process. Okay, let's collapse this and let's remove that filter as well. Get back to where we were before. Okay, now what I want to do is actually take a look at some objects, for example, that might have unsustainable MIME types in them. So I'm going to filter by unsustainable MIME type, and you can see that there are objects that have been detected in multiple collections that might have unsustainable MIME types. Again, this is one thing to mention here. As before, there is an info, warn, and fail status for these. So some of these unsustainable MIME types might just be an info status where we just want to give somebody a heads up that says, okay, consider this file, but it's probably fine, versus a failure status, which of course is one of those files that we consider as something that should not be in the collection at all. So what I'm going to do here is go to one of the collections that just has several objects, and let's take a look at what's in here. And I will break this out to another tab. Okay, so let's scroll down. And within this particular object, we have, okay, this is a tar file that's been noted here. This has no sidecar metadata, just another note to add. So MIME types for objects. So what is happening here essentially is that this particular MIME type is being considered unsustainable. But if you'll notice, it's an info. So from the standpoint of having a tar file in this particular collection, that's a decision for the depositor to make. In this case, it probably makes complete sense to have it here, and we're definitely not considering the tar file as completely unsustainable. It's just an informational warning, or an informational note here. So let's close this tab. And so there are other objects that we could actually look through here. If I scroll over, you'll see that all of the different unsustainable MIME type notices here are in the info section. So we would probably see more of the same of what we just looked at. There would be a file that probably makes sense to have here, but we're just warning it, or we're just flagging it in case people would like to take a look at it. Okay, and one more example on this particular dashboard. Clear that filter as well. Let's look at a MIME extension mismatch. And so here, for example, there's a single MIME extension mismatch in this particular collection. And oops, I want to scroll, but I currently cannot scroll. Let's try this again and refresh our dashboard. Okay, we're back here. Let's go ahead and view this single document. And again, we are looking for an extension mismatch. And so here's the note about MIME extension mismatch. And it turns out that a document that is in this object is actually a PDF, but the file extension that's being used on the document is docx, so it's incorrect. So this is a file or a case where we could actually replace that file and correct the issue between a PDF, or for a PDF file that actually has a docx file extension on it. So that's a demonstration, a quick demonstration of being able to narrow down to a MIME extension mismatch. So let's remove those filters, and then we're going to bounce over to one other dashboard for a couple of other notes. This dashboard is actually a MIME type issues dashboard. Now, we were just talking a lot about that same topic on the other dashboard, but this one is actually situated to highlight that type of information more readily. And so you'll see over here in this panel, Merritt object MIME extension mismatches. We'll actually be able to go straight to different objects that have MIME extension mismatches straight from this panel. And then again, for the object analysis over here in the MIME, then we can see all the different MIME types that have been discovered through analysis of these objects in these collections. So again, you can filter as we did before on the other dashboard and get down to much smaller range of objects that we can eventually just take a look at one object at a time that look interesting to us. So at this time in this whole project is in the prototype stage, and we're gathering feedback from stakeholders on the functionality that's provided. We're definitely looking for that input for how folks want to tune the analysis, tune the tests, what makes sense for them, and of course, giving them the information that they need to ask the right questions and help us tailor this project so it becomes a productive tool for everyone to dig into. And with that, I think we're wrapped up here on the demonstration. Please have a look at the other links that are on this page where you found this video, and go ahead and reach out to us if you have any questions or are interested in discussing it more. Thanks so much.